Well, hello there guys, Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to share with you another one of my requested top 5 list videos to share with you guys today. Now for this video, I'll be going over my personal top 5 favorite fighting video games. Now I will admit that fighting games wouldn't necessarily fall into my overall top 5 favorite genre of games that I enjoy playing the most, but I have enjoyed playing fighting games over the course of my life, and over that time I've played a lot of fantastic fighting games that I have not only enjoyed playing with fellow friends, but opponents online, and at any time I will be more than happy to play a match with just about anybody. So before I get into my personal ranking of my top 5 favorite fighting video games, if you do happen to enjoy this video by the end, please, I would really appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up and press the subscribe button so you can hopefully keep track of me in my future videos. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into my list, and I shall start off with number 5. Taking the number 5 spot on my list will have to go to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Fighting Edition. Now, being a 90s kid, I spent my early years playing on both the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, and while I had played other fighting games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, and the 16-bit era as a whole brought many entertaining 2D fighting games, but with 5-year-old Brian being such a massive fan of Power Rangers during this time, so that any time I was ever in the mood to play a fighting game, I would usually make this my first choice. Now, while it's always nice to see the Rangers fight monsters and putties, it was always the Megazord fights that was always my favorite part of the show. So to have a fighting game centered entirely around Megazords and giant monsters fighting made it even more perfect for me. The game has many different fighting stages to fight in, with up to 8 Megazords and monsters to choose from the massive Shogun Megazord to even Lord Zed himself. And it even has one secret fighter that I won't mention in this video. But like any other great fighting game, each character has a wide collection of special attacks, super moves, and grappling attacks. And when it comes to Power Rangers, you can't have a great Megazord fight in the game like this unless you have some pretty cool finishes in a majority of the fights. I spent a lot of time playing this game with my friends, but even if you don't have someone to play with, the primary story mode can provide a solid amount of challenge, allowing you to unlock certain characters as you progress. Now, I am aware that compared to the other 4 games on this list, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Fighting Edition might seem relatively basic, but for me, even after 25 years, this game has not lost any of its charm. Ranked 4th on my list will have to go to Final Fantasy Dissidia NT. Now, JRPGs are my favorite genre of games, and Final Fantasy is my favorite JRPG franchise of all time. And with over 25 years and many memorable characters, making a fighting game around Final Fantasy characters did sound like a solid idea. And while there were 2 installments of the Dissidia series released on the PSP, I always felt that it would be much better on console, and in 2018 I got my wish. Now, Final Fantasy Dissidia NT takes at least one hero and one villain from over 15 entries in the Final Fantasy franchise, with an additional number of characters added after the game's initial release. And now, the actual fighting mechanics itself is a bit different than most fighting games. You can assemble a team of up to 3 fighters to take on another team of up to 3 fighters, and instead of reducing your opponent's HP like in standard fighting games, the objective this time is to reduce your opponent's battle points to 0, which will then make them vulnerable to a finishing killing blow. And if you manage to get 3 kills on your opponent, then you will win. The battles take place on a wide open 3D playing field and take the form of recognizable locations from multiple Final Fantasy games in the franchise. As you progress through the game, you'll have access to be able to change weapons and overall looks for certain characters. The game does have a story mode, but even by Final Fantasy standards, it's nothing too special. But the best aspect of the story itself is simply the interactions between certain characters. And trust me, there is no short of entertaining moments between characters, and that alone is enough to add it on my list. Taking the number 3 spot on my list will have to go to the original Super Smash Bros. From 1999 on the Nintendo 64. Now, I would like to state that as of right now, I have not had a chance to play any of the Super Smash Bros. Games that were released after this one, and the primary reason that a game like PlayStation All-Stars can't make it on this list is because it was a clear ripoff of Super Smash Bros. But wasn't nearly as good. The 1999 version of Super Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64 is without question one of the most addicting games that I ever played as a kid. With up to 12 playable characters, the first Super Smash Bros. Game had an impressive roster of characters that were all from well-known Nintendo properties. Now, like most fighting games, the combat this time is done on a 2D playing across many different Nintendo-themed locations, with the objective being to cause enough damage to the point where you simply knock your opponents off the stage or send them flying. During combat, many support items and weapons will pop up to aid you or your opponent to provide even greater levels of challenge and entertainment. Each character has their own collection of strengths and weaknesses and are suited for specific types of playstyles. Being exclusive on the Nintendo 64 at the time, it allowed up to 4 players to play at any one time that could either choose to play as part of teams or could go for a total free-for-all to see which player would be the last one remaining. The Super Smash series is still going strong today, and with the roster of characters continuing to grow, and while I may have never played any of the newer installments of the series, the original game from the Nintendo 64 will always remain a classic to me. For the number 2 spot, we must venture into the amazing franchise that is Dragon Ball, and the franchise itself has had no short of fun and entertaining fighting games, and while I will admit that I still not have gotten around to playing the most recent Dragon Ball FighterZ game, if I had to choose my favorite Dragon Ball game of all time, it would have to go to Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. This game has everything you could ask for in a fighting game of this kind. The fighting mechanics here were extremely well balanced and easy to adapt to, with a very large roster of characters that went all the way from Dragon Ball all the way to the GT era. The amount of customization that you had access to was expansive for each Dragon Ball Z character, and each character themselves has their own unique story-driven campaign, which at the time was a pretty new thing when you compare it to the 2 prior Budokai games that came before it that were pretty short. There are a number of unique fighting modes along with the training modes for each character. The overall visuals to me really helps this game stand apart from the large collection of Dragon Ball games that have been made, and there's even a solid level of exploration that allows you to discover different paths and story elements that you could easily miss. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 did things that future installments would take inspiration from, and even to this day I find a great deal of enjoyment from this game, and that's more than enough reason to grant it the number 2 spot on my list. Taking the top spot on my list will have to go to the latest installment in the Mortal Kombat franchise, which by the time of this video's release is Mortal Kombat 11. After so many years and so many installments, we've gotten to the point where the newest installment usually ends up being the best installment by simply taking what came before and adding improvements or additions. I've been playing Mortal Kombat since I was a kid, and out of any fighting game franchise, to me at least, Mortal Kombat has the best resume despite having a few duds along the way. The main story for Mortal Kombat 11 wasn't anything incredible, but it did serve its purpose and has me even more excited for the next installment when it comes in the form of Mortal Kombat 12. Mortal Kombat 11 on its own had a very strong and unique collection of fighters to choose from that all had to support different types of fighting styles and approaches to combat. The amount of extras that you will have access to can be a bit overwhelming at times, and thanks to the Crypt, you can unlock a ton of extras that any fan of Mortal Kombat will enjoy. The fatalities continue to get more bloody and more gruesome, and that's really what Mortal Kombat is famous for. And with the addition of the Aftermath content, it simply added to what was already a quality product. Mortal Kombat as a franchise does not disappoint very often, and since being taken over by NetherRealm Studios, we have received nothing but hit after hit after hit, and I'm sure that will continue on into Mortal Kombat 12 when it eventually releases. Now, depending on who you ask, Mortal Kombat has openly been recognized as one of the king of the fighting game franchises, rivaled by only Street Fighter. But as much as I have enjoyed the other fighting games that I've named on this list, none of them have the legacy that Mortal Kombat has, and Mortal Kombat 11 is simply the latest installment in this legendary franchise, which is why not only is Mortal Kombat 11 my all-time favorite fighting game as of right now, but chances are a Mortal Kombat game will always remain my favorite on the top of my list. Well, I'm sure anyone that happened to have not only noticed the shirt that I'm wearing, but has been watching my channel long enough, probably would know that number 1 really shouldn't have surprised anyone. But that's how my list goes, and that's how it's going to be. So, now that you guys know my personal top 5 favorite fighting games of all time, what are some of your guys' favorite fighting video games of all time? Let me know and share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will catch you next time.